Manchester hooks at Auburn, and those of you that may be joining us via computer stream somewhere, and we've had some requests for that, which made me feel very good. I'm happy to kick off the first show of the new year with my good friend and long-term co-host, the Honorable Mike Farley,
Good to be here,
who
Bob.
probably isn't wearing a tuxedo, but it kind of almost looks like he's got a tuxedo with a tie undone. And
No,
very good
just a
friend
blue
and
blazer,
our
trying to
very
dress it up a
frequent
little bit.
and always appreciated guest, the irrepressible feisty. I always like to say that. That's my two adjectives: irrepressible and feisty. Arnie Arneson, and she's never at a loss for word, folks. You all know that out there. And don't we come on here at a monumental time in our nation and in our state and our city, but I think the nation perhaps takes the foremost place. This afternoon, I'm sure everybody would be interested in the show and has been watching, or on their media to know that the President Trump has now been impeached for the second time, which is one more time than he's been elected. Think about that. He's been impeached twice. He's only been elected once. And that was quite a thing. And I'm sure Arnie's going to have plenty to say about that. We can talk about that. We can talk about what's going to be happening with the Great and General Court in these fraught times. It's just astonishing. And there are city issues that we might even want to talk about too, but that wouldn't be so much Arnie's thing, because Arnie is a citizen of the United States and the state of New Hampshire, but she does not live in Manchester. And so welcome, Arnie. Welcome, Mike. It's really good to have you here. And once again, I want everybody to know that I come into the studio. I'm here live. I trust my predecessors did what they said did. They didn't wipe this thing down with a disinfectant. So I'm minimizing my risk being here, but we're all at risk now. My gosh, what a time. And then the reason I come in is so I can field your calls. And there's nothing we like better than the progress report to get calls. So, the number, I'm sure it's on the screen, isn't it? It should be 640-3091. And we love to hear from our viewers and have them respond or make a comment. So, Arnie, Mike, you want to go with something here to kick things off?
Well, Bob, as we've been discussing a little bit, boy, a lot has happened, and I got to tell you, I am alarmed. I am alarmed, and I do have a few things to say. Arnie, if you'll forgive me, let me jump in, and then I'll step aside, and we can join the conversation. But as I have been saying for years, Bob, the proof was in the pudding last Wednesday. This is not one guy acting alone. A leader without followers is just a guy taking a walk. It's the followers, it's the movement that he has tapped into. That is the issue. We are in the middle of a coup. It is not over. It is not over.
I'm afraid you're right, Mike.
What happened on Wednesdays was not the end of it. There are plans this weekend to bring armed insurrection to every single capital city in the country. And for those who don't know, that's Concord, New Hampshire. That's one of them. And,
right.
The state police are on alert, and they know that they're going to have to take care of something, and we can only hope for the best. But this coup is ongoing. These people they're in amongst us. And it's not only the people that are outside trying to get in. We saw that this coup is embedded in our police departments. We saw people flashing badges. We saw cops taking selfies. This is very, very dangerous. And moreover, this coup is in our government. We saw Congress, elected people in Congress, shoving Capitol Police so that they could bring a gun onto the House floor, which has always been prohibited and should be in New Hampshire as well.
Absolutely.
They won't go through the magnetometers. They're just violating every single bit of decorum, and it stretches down even further. Right here in Manchester, we've got the show that was on before us. They're perpetrating the big lie. They're following Goebbels' playbook and continuing to perpetrate the big lie. Remember the first day, it was Antifa, this wasn't Trump guys? No, it was MAGA. It was MAGA, it was you guys, it was Republicans. An armed, violent insurrection by Republicans against the United States of America. And those clowns that come on before us are part of it, they support it, and they ought to be investigated. And let me tell you what, the guys that come on after us have been doing the same thing, perpetrating the big lie. I heard one of them, I'm not going to name names, they know who they are, say that weren't folded being counted. Now, he might have seen a video. He might have thought he saw that. He didn't see that. That was a lie, and he knows it. And they'll come on tonight, and they'll perpetrate it again. You know, Bob, with us, it's like being a beautiful hunk of ham in a sandwich between two pieces of moldy bread. You know, what we got is we've got the big lie before us. We're trying to tell the truth. We come in and we don't just spout off what we believe. I'm doing it now, but I'm going to stop. We bring in guests. We try to educate the public. We try to highlight the good things that are happening. And then we got another piece of moldy bread that comes in after us and complains about everything going wrong. And tying themselves to Trump, putting it on their yard signs when they run for election, they ought to be investigated for supporting insurrection. There's blood on their hands. People died because of this. Oh, and by the way, more people died last Wednesday than at Benghazi. Remember Benghazi?
Yeah.
Remember how many years of investigations we had on Benghazi?
Yeah.
Well, fewer people died in Benghazi than died last Wednesday. Let's see how they choke on that.
Yeah. And while we're on that, there's more troops in Washington than in Iraq, Afghanistan, and Syria combined right now. Arnie,
Well, you know,
You're
let
up.
me just speak. I have a friend who writes for papers in New Jersey, and the Capitol cop that was killed, okay, who was hit over the head with a fire extinguisher, all right? He was a Trump supporter, everyone.
he was?
Yes.
I
yes.
did not know that.
No, but I am telling you this.
That doesn't mean he deserves to get hit in the head with a fire
Of course not.
extinguisher.
Let me finish my thought. He was a Trump supporter. That was his political belief. But his job was to protect people on the Capitol. His job was to protect members of Congress. He took that job seriously. He died. I want people to understand that when you came in like a lynch mob, you just came in and you were going to destroy whatever was in your way. And that's what is so horrific about what happened. I am telling you this because the person they ended up killing was someone who actually believed in Donald Trump. But that didn't matter. He was wearing a uniform. He was protecting people on the Capitol. Therefore, he needed to go.
Well, the woman who was killed in the protest by a Capitol policeman trying to get into the House chamber, I believe, she was a Trump supporter too.
Well, but she
And,
broke
and
in.
likewise, she didn't deserve to die.
Hey, that was some tough video to watch.
She broke in. This is like, you know, if someone broke into your house, you have a right to shoot them. It's called the Castle Doctrine. You
Yeah.
know that. You know that.
Yeah.
And that's what was she doing? She was trying to get through a window of the door onto the floor of the Congress. And you know what? What were you supposed to think? You didn't know whether she was armed or not. You know the
Yeah.
people that were in there were not armed. You knew that they were members of Congress. So the Capitol Police were trying to figure out what to do. This
Yeah.
is called chaos. This invites violence. It invites death. You don't know who you're shooting because everyone looks like the enemy, and that is part of the problem. But here's I posted something on Facebook just a few minutes ago, and whenever I get agitated, and you know this, Bob, because you see my Facebook page, I rearrange the furniture. This is what
Yeah,
I do.
I
don't
saw you
drink.
say that.
I've never been drunk in my life. I don't smoke dope. I don't do any of those things. So I rearrange the furniture. It's my therapy. But here's what I wrote, and I think it's important because I'm watching these impeachment hearings, and I wrote the following: I'm exhausted. Did an amazing interview this morning with one of the nation's experts on impeachment, as the debate over impeachment was going on in the background on C-SPAN. Multitasking on steroids. I'm learning about how the fragile experiment called democracy planned for exactly what we are witnessing on our TV screen from Barbara Radnowski, author of A Citizen's Guide to Impeachment. This is beyond surreal. The vote is over. I'm getting ready to Skype the local public access TV show, and again pacing and processing. So I look at my dining room table and realize, oh, it needs a pop of orange. So I go to my because I'm consumed by sadness, fear, and frankly awe that exactly 1 week ago we were horrified by a lynch mob overrunning Capitol Hill. And now we are witnessing an orderly discussion and vote on impeachment in that exact same location. This is whiplash. Think about this. Think a week ago, they were hiding under their desks.
It was the Bastille.
It was the Bastille. They were wearing face masks. And now, exactly 1 week later, and almost at the exact same time, Bob, look what we were watching. I mean, this is what America has become. How do you process? How do you figure out how to regain stability? I mean, I keep hearing these Republicans who suddenly want to do kumbaya. I want to vomit.
Yeah, that,
Yeah.
I mean, that really,
We don't wanna
that,
point
that
fingers.
really frosted me. Their arguments that, impeachment's going to be divisive. We need unity. When the hell has President Trump ever stretched himself to, never mind unify, even reach out to anybody beyond his base? He has never in his entire presidency tried to be president of all the people of the United States, only of his base. That's all he cares about. And that's his source of power. Let me ask you both this. The impeachment vote is over, this afternoon, as I'm sure obviously you both know, and probably most of our viewers know. And unlike the last impeachment, where there were 0 Republican votes to impeach the president in the House of Representatives, this time there were 10. Do you view that as the glass half full or the glass half empty? What do you think?
That's the highest number of bipartisan votes on an impeachment ever. It didn't happen with Clinton. 10 is a huge number, believe it or not. And let's understand why.
In the House of Representatives.
The House of Representatives.
Yeah, I mean, that,
Let me explain to you why 10 is also a huge number.
and who they were, Arnie.
Pardon me?
And who they were. We had leadership, I mean,
Oh yeah, Wyoming. It's Wyoming with Cheney. Her statement was unbelievable. But also remember, she had cover from her father.
Yeah.
Because remember how her father had gotten all these people from the military to pen that op-ed that went to the New York Times and the Washington Post.
Well, I remember her father pushing the enhanced interrogation, i.e. torture agenda on the George W. Bush administration. I thought that guy was irredeemably evil. So it's particularly nice to me to see his daughter stand up for the Constitution and the rights of the people of the United States, not to be governed by a president who attempts to get a coup against the government he leads. Very satisfying.
Well,
So let's not forget where she comes from.
Oh no, I know where she comes from, and they overwhelmingly, by huge double digits, voted for Donald Trump.
Right.
So she is running a risk, like frankly every Republican in Congress.
Yeah.
And the reason is that they have embraced partisan gerrymandering. Everyone, let me remind you, we're about to approach
do it again.
gerrymandering in the New Hampshire House because it flipped from Democrat to Republican, and that means they're going to aid and abet the Republican Party, and that means the only election that matters for those folks is the primary. So they are not worried about a general election. They are worried about what Donald Trump will do and what the crazies will do when they vote in the primary, because they are going to hold that against them. That's why they're so afraid. They want to hold on to their power. They're willing to sacrifice our country. They're willing to sacrifice democracy, the transfer of power, because they're so afraid of losing in that primary. But there's one more thing. They're also afraid for their life. You heard.
I've heard that.
You've heard. So I'm going to suggest something. They should call a couple of black parents in America and ask them what happens when they do the talk with their kids.
Yeah.
Because they're afraid for their kids' lives too.
When you say they're afraid for their lives, what are you talking about, Arnie? I hadn't heard that before. Republicans
Oh,
are afraid for their
absolutely.
lives if they break with Trump?
Oh my God, they're absolutely afraid that if they voted for impeachment, that their families and they would be threatened with
Oh,
life.
yeah.
And it's not just impeachment. I have heard reporting that that has impacted votes in the past as well. That it was not just political intimidation, it was physical intimidation for their families back home. That these people actually have admitted to taking votes in the face of physical intimidation, and that influenced the vote. It's pathetic. It's pathetic. As much as I can
And
sympathize,
yet,
that's
it's
not the
understandable,
solution.
given what we heard from the leaders of this, whatever they were, this mob, this riotous mob. Mike Pence has been the loyal vice president for 4 years to this guy. Nothing he
Not
did
loyal
to
enough.
shake Mike Pence's loyalty to this president. Proudest moment of my
wasn't
life,
willing
serving
to-
as his
he
vice
wasn't willing to
president.
be a traitor.
And they turned on him like that. They turned on him like that. Put up a noose and said, "Hang Mike Pence."
And if they found him, what do you think would have happened?
Yeah.
I mean, this, I am telling you right now, you saw a lynch mob. That's what they were, Bob. They were a lynch mob.
Yeah.
And, but for the grace of God, nobody was, the 5 people were killed, but trust me, if they had gotten onto the floor and where they couldn't able to get Nancy Pelosi to a safe place, remember that one Capitol Hill cop who knew they were going down towards the Senate and actually redirected them in a different direction?
Yeah.
But what's really
Good
scary,
thinking, quick thinking.
well, but what was really scary is they knew where a lot of the offices were.
Yeah.
They were getting tours the day before. There were congressmen giving tours the day before, pointing out targets.
Right.
Yeah.
That's been reported, and we're going to find out more and more about it. They're looking into that.
Yeah.
And so it's going to be interesting. Now we're going to have to figure out what happens in the Senate. You're hearing that while Mitch McConnell is embracing the idea of impeachment, he doesn't want to begin the hearings until he's no longer in power and can put it on Schumer's desk. I don't think that's wise of him, frankly.
You know what I heard today? Who's going to take over the mantle of defending Trump from Mitch McConnell? Lindsey Graham. Lindsey Graham.
Lindsey Graham is going to defend Trump.
He's going to be the one that's going to oppose the impeachment, lead the opposition to conviction in the Senate. Now maybe I'm hearing something that's not real, but that was just recently reported because Mitch McConnell is sending out signals that he's no longer going to rally his caucus to defend Trump in the impeachment trial.
And you know why. Mitch McConnell is all about power, his personal power. He is looking at 2022, and he's trying to figure out, how do I regroup?
Yeah.
And what fools him is that he's hearing now from the Chamber of Commerce, from Goldman Sachs, from the manufacturers, and they're all saying, if you don't embrace this peaceful transfer of power, if you don't intend to basically embrace the impeachment, we're not going to fund you. I mean, think about the people how many senators denied the vote? How many members of Congress denied the vote? And now we're hearing corporate America stepping up and saying, you know what, cash, that is the mother's milk of politics. And control the cash, and you live off of our political teat. Well, you know what? It's going to dry up unless you behave. So that's what Mitch McConnell is recognizing, and maybe it'll make a difference for some of those members of Congress.
Yeah, I think that's one of the biggest stories. It hasn't really been emphasized as much as some of the other things, and that is the decision of some major political donors to the Republican Party are pulling away, like Marriott. Marriott's been a solid Republican, supported company for years and years, and so many others. And then they lose Sheldon Adelson, who was a huge supporter for the Republicans, who dies at age 87. Any money he didn't give to the Republicans, he gave to support the Israeli right-wingers like Netanyahu. I mean, they've lost those things, and I don't know. I think if there's one thing that's going to turn around the Republicans, it's probably the threat that their funding sources are going to dry up.
Oh, I think that, and corporate America knows that.
Yeah.
But how pathetic is that?
Yeah.
We're not a nation state, we're a market state.
Yeah.
I mean, who are we genuflecting to? Corporate America is going to basically dictate how one party totally behaves, and frankly, they give to both.
Yeah.
So that makes me really concerned. I mean, I want to embrace some sort of, public financing of campaigns and term limits. That way, a pox on all of them. A pox on all of them.
Yeah.
I want to elect someone without fear, and I don't want someone to manipulate them because they're giving them a check with a comma in it.
Well, I'm not sure I'm with you on term limits, but I certainly am on campaign limitations. Well, guys, I suggest that we maybe take a quick break, and I'll be right back with you. One thing I want to adjust the volume. Your volume here is pretty low, and I don't want to risk cutting you off by futzing around here, but that's one thing I'll do during the break. And during the break, folks, I really hope some of you out there will call us. You don't have to talk about this. There's other things we can talk about. How about what's happening with the state of New Hampshire as we try and move our legislature into dealing with 800-odd bills in a time when we can't meet in person, and committee meetings are going to be hybrid and all of that. We can talk about all of that. We could talk about, although I don't think these guests are particularly going to be the ones to talk about that, but I do hope to get to it. The terrible situation at the Valley Street Jail. The leadership of that jail seems to be a real problem now. An outbreak of COVID in that jail is really terrible, and all kinds of issues that we're having to deal with. But any of those things you want to talk about or something else, please give us a call, and I'll ask Brenda to take us off the air for just a minute, and then we'll regroup, and we'll be back with my wonderful co-host and my favorite almost co-host, Arnie Arnesen. We'll be right back. Hello, folks. I guess I had cut myself off with this camera not being quite the right level. I hope you can see all of my head this time, not just my yakking away mouth and chin. But I am glad to be back with you for the second segment of the progress report. And obviously with Arnie and Mike Farley, my co-host, Arnie Arnesen, almost a co-host. She's on the program a lot, and we always love having her. We've been chewing over the second impeachment of the President Trump and where that could go. And obviously where it's going to go eventually is to a trial in the Senate, which will be very unique because of all the impeachments we had in this country, there's been 4, Trump has 2 of them, good for him. We've never had one before to deal with a president out of office, an ex-president. And already people are saying, well, we can't bother with that. But there is a precedent. Apparently there's 2 precedents involving not presidents, but other people who were impeached, left office, and then the trials went forward. So the precedent is very strong that you don't escape the trial in the Senate just because you've left office, which we still think Trump is going to do on January 20th. 1 week from today. 1 week from today. 1 week ago, this very January 20th, 4 years ago, Trump delivered the most dreadful inaugural address in the history of the United States, talking about this American carnage ends today. Yeah, the American carnage ends today. In his time, the American carnage has reached the halls of the United States Capitol, a beacon of freedom for our citizens and around the world. It's launched there. So one thing I wanted to get to, and I want to ask my co-host and our guest about, is the takedown of Trump by Twitter, Facebook, And lots of other folks have said we're cutting off Trump's access to social media. And a lot of people, it's interesting when you watch a bit of Fox News. I've been trying to watch a bit of Fox News to see where they're coming from, because they're not wedded to facts, but they do have strong opinions. It's been very interesting. And Fox News, as I've been watching them, and maybe I've missed it, but they're no longer endorsing Trump's call that the election was fraudulent and stolen. They're not endorsing that. What they are talking about is terrible for big media to take this down. It could happen to somebody else in the future, even though there's no First Amendment issue here, folks. The First Amendment only applies to action by government.
Bob and Arnie, can I jump in?
Please.
There's something a little box you have to check before you can play with those platforms. It's the terms of service box.
Just gonna say that.
They get to do what they want.
Yeah, they do.
And so what I was trying to
Even though we don't read that stuff, it's still there, and you've approved it by pushing accept, or, I'll take the service.
Private company. You have to comply with their, quote, terms and conditions.
Yeah.
Terms and conditions. That means that if they want to unplug you because you don't play by the terms and conditions, they have every right. Welcome to the world of corporate America. Welcome to the world of a private contract. And people keep thinking free speech, and as you pointed out, it only applies to government.
Government action. That's right. Federal or state.
I mean, people, but they don't know. We've never been taught civics, Bob. This is the best civics lesson we've ever gotten.
It
Not
is.
only
It is.
about impeachment, but we're also learning about what is free speech and when do you have it and when can you not argue that.
Right.
And that's really what we're learning. And Donald Trump never knew. And because people are ignorant of the difference, they think that he is being denied his free speech, when in fact he's not being denied anything in the way. He could still call a TV station and give a speech.
Well, he could have a press conference. How about that for a novel idea? Prior presidents have had press conferences. He's pretty much never does. Oh, we have a call.
Freedom of speech doesn't mean freedom from the consequences.
Right.
Exactly.
I'm going to take a phone call from Bob. Hi, Bob. You're on the progress report with me and remotely Arnie and Mike Farley. You there?
Hello, this is Bob.
Bob, welcome.
I was wondering, do you think President Trump is going to lose his pension after the Senate trial?
Well, that's an interesting question. If he has a Senate trial, and assume you're adding he gets convicted, which I think is unlikely but not impossible, will he lose his government pension? I don't know. But one of the things that's going to be very important in this, and why this trial will not be moot, even if it's after, which it obviously will be, he's left office, as we expect he will, reluctantly. The 14th Amendment has a section that says, if you've been involved in an insurrection against the United States, you cannot again hold federal office. That depends on, first of all, his conviction, and then they can deprive him of ever running for federal office again by a simple majority vote, is my understanding.
Right, but that's not
That's quite a punishment, I think.
Yeah,
Of course, what he did was really wrong.
yeah, right. Okay. Let's see, anybody else? Well, thanks for calling, Bob. I hope we've helped you
You're
out.
welcome.
Thank you.
Have a great night.
Thank you. Bye.
All right, Bob, it doesn't require bringing in the 14th Amendment. Let me just read to you what happens. The Senate gets to convict by 2/3 vote on any one charge, okay? Doesn't matter, but they first have to do that. Once they've done that, they've then, quote unquote, removed the president or the former president. Then they have a second vote. The second vote is to disqualify an impeached and convicted high officer, in this case the president, so that he can never, ever run again. It is a second vote. It's part of their trial. The first one is you have to find them guilty. 2/3 vote. Once you do that on any article, then you can immediately, or you can wait. You can wait 6 months and then have a second vote to disqualify from ever running again, which is exactly what Mitch McConnell wants. He wants him to sort of disappear and never be an issue in 2024. That is a second vote, but it's still part of the impeachment trial process. It is not the 14th Amendment. It is just a bifurcated thing. First one, 2/3, disqualify for life. That is only a majority vote. It's really interesting how it works. It's fascinating.
Well, we'll see what happens. My belief is that in the House, they wanted to move so fast, and appropriately so, that they did not have any hearings. I mean, the public record is replete with enough to indict this man, which is what a impeachment is. It's an indictment. The trial in the Senate, they may be able to dig into some more facts. Like, for example, did Trump have knowledge through intelligence sources that these people were planning violence in advance? And what did he do if he had that information? I find it hard to believe that he might not have. But you know,
I don't
there
know
would.
if Trump had it, Bob, but let me tell you what, somebody captured a whole dump of parlor information before they went down, and that's been provided to the FBI, and there was a lot of background chatter among the insurrectionists. I'm not saying that Trump was involved in that, but there was coordination and planning. So it wasn't a spontaneous uprising. Sound like Benghazi?
Not at all.
Well, I mean, that was the argument, right? Was it spontaneous or was it planned? Well,
Yeah.
we got the same argument. We got the same thing here, and it looks like there's evidence that this was very heavily planned.
Yeah.
Well, and let me say something about the fact that we're in the middle of this pandemic, and we're now seeing it becoming even more of a problem because it's so highly contagious. We actually now have people who can be glued to TV and learn their civics lesson if they hold this trial in the Senate in a way that didn't happen with the first impeachment. And because we have nowhere to go, let's be honest. Plus, we're horrified by what we saw happening on January 6th, and we realize the instability. Plus, we're going to be horrified what may happen on January 20th, not even if you're in D.C., but if you're in Concord or Boston or wherever you are in the 50 capitals. So in a fascinating way, here is a real opportunity to educate the American people, not only on our rights, not only what is meant by free speech, but also to be able to educate the people on what exactly Donald Trump did, who his accomplices were, and why we want to make sure it never happens again. It will be an incredible, almost a PhD on what happened. Because we have, let's be honest, Bob, what have you been doing with your life for the last couple of months? It's going to be that way until probably late spring, and that will give the Senate the time to actually go through this incredibly thorough investigation and trial.
And by the way, they'll probably be able to get their subpoenas because the Democrats will be in control of the Senate.
Exactly.
Right.
Exactly.
Yeah, the Democratic control of the Senate is really something, isn't it? Although we have to remember that in the Senate, because of archaic rules about filibusters, you won't get any legislation passed with a bare majority made by the vice president breaking ties. That doesn't
Don't
do
they
it.
get to make the rules on day one, though?
But you get to make the rules, and you get to appoint chairmen of committees, and
What's
the
gonna
committees
happen?
will be investigating things other than the Democrats. So that's very, very important. But you have to remember, this is a very narrow majority. If the Democrats lose any one Democrat on a particular vote, they'll lose that vote. If the
You
Republicans
mean
don't
Joe
lose
Manchin?
anything.
You're talking about Joe Manchin, right?
Well, he's been pretty good. I mean, he's a very conservative guy.
No,
Says you.
Well, he didn't break away. He voted for the impeachment of Trump in the first round. A lot of people thought he wouldn't.
Well, let's remember, he said he didn't support the idea of a $2,000 check. He's
Yeah.
already come out on that. He also poo-pooed the idea of the second impeachment. He's
Yeah.
already said it. But he said it before Mitch McConnell said that he wanted it. Now that
Yeah.
I think is interesting because I'm wondering if that rehabilitated his position after Mitch basically said, I
Yeah.
think I could like this idea.
He's got
Yeah.
a long way to go in my book for rehabilitation, that guy.
Well, we don't want him to be a Republican. He may not be our favorite Democrat, but we need every one of them.
Might as well be.
Yeah. So one of the arguments against impeachment, and Joe Biden, I think, kind of almost sort of endorsed this, but not really, because he said this is up to the Congress when they were asking him what he thought about it. But one of the arguments is this is going to really interfere with Joe Biden getting off to a flying start in his first 100 days, which ever since FDR's first term has been a signature thing. How much can you get done in the so-called honeymoon in the first 100 days?
Well, maybe they can work Thursdays and Fridays.
Oh, God, Bob, we can't walk away again.
Yeah.
The level of corruption, what we will uncover is so overwhelming. I mean, this is a real problem. Remember how angry we still are that no banker did a perp walk after 2008?
Right.
And who came roaring back? But Wall Street and Main Street got screwed. And that in part fed into what we saw happening, frankly, with what Donald Trump was able to do.
Yeah.
He was able to play the populist card. Ironically, in so many ways, what Bernie Sanders said, he kind of embraced and distorted. So people were kind of thinking they were getting a Republican version of Bernie Sanders.
Yeah.
Hell no. But part of what fed that was what we never dealt with, which was the corruption that led to 2008. We've got to stop.
Yeah.
We've got to weed it out. We've got to expose it like a cancer and cut it out. We can't go forward unless we clean up the past.
So here's something that's really bothering me, and I'd like to get you folks to weigh in on it. We are beginning to see some breaking away from Trump at the level of elected Republicans.
Right.
10 U.S. congressmen voted to support the impeachment this time, where none did last time. We have even Mitch McConnell, the guy that sends all good bills to their grave by never getting a vote in the Senate. The guy who said he wanted to make Obama as his first order of business a one-term president. Even that guy is apparently backing away from Trump. But the mass of Trump supporters, the people that fueled this riot and basically many of them went to this riot, they are not backing away from Trump at all. How do we get these people to get back in the realm of reality and understand that this guy is not telling them the truth? They believe what he says. How do we do that?
Well, I'm hoping they start rounding them up. I mean, that's another advantage by having the executive branch being controlled by Joe Biden. Because you know what? Now we have so much tape. We have so many tips. We know who these people are. They're not going to be able to disappear. They're going to lose their jobs. You know that. Because if they're working in the
We may
private
round
sector-
them up, we may prosecute them, they may serve time, but they'll still be Trump supporters. And Trump got what, 74 million votes to Biden's 81 million? The most votes ever, except for Biden, in this election? I mean, I just don't understand. I'm always thinking back to one of my true heroes, and I suspect yours too. Jimmy Carter was the best man probably ever elected, the best human being ever elected president of the United States. Probably the most gentle, honorable, moral person ever elected president of the United States. And he used to say, I'm running because I think the American people deserve a government as good as they are. Are we that good? How can we be when we have 74 million people voting for this rascal, this mob boss, and doing it twice? I mean, I don't know how to get at this, but it makes me really concerned about the future of our country, that these people, like the Pied Piper of Hamelin, could be led on to disasters like this.
Bob, can I
riot.
throw in some statistics? I heard in a recent poll this past week, 60% of Republicans either strongly approved or somewhat approved of the action taken against Congress on Wednesday.
Yeah.
I just heard today a Frank Luntz poll, which is a pretty good poll. 74% of Republicans today believe the election was rigged.
Wow. And we had good efforts. We had Bill Weld's campaign to be provide an alternative to Trump. We had the Lincoln Project and various other projects. As far as I can tell, they had almost no effect to peel off any reasonable number, any significant number of Trump backers. So I say again, as I've said many times, Trump has only told us the truth one time in his entire political career, and that's when he said he could go out on Fifth Avenue and shoot somebody and it wouldn't hurt his popularity. And that's just so frightening. It's just hard for me to get my mind around that. People don't care about the facts, or they get the facts, which aren't the facts that they think they are because they come from Fox News.
I think Joe Biden needs to deliver. He needs to deliver checks. He needs to deliver infrastructure. He needs to deliver health care. He needs to and the reason I say this is I love Florida because Florida is my best example. Florida had a bill to increase the minimum wage. Every Republican said don't do it. No Republican supported it. They thought they had given it a poison pill and said it had to get at least 60% of the vote in order for the increase in the minimum wage to pass.
Yeah.
Guess what? It did. It did in a state that overwhelmingly supports Republicans and Donald Trump. So guess what? When you actually talk about the policy, people embrace it. Look at the felons in Florida. Same story. They wanted to give ex-felons the ability to exercise the franchise. It needed, I think, a 2/3 vote in Florida. No Republicans supported it. It passed overwhelmingly. What does that say? I think what Joe Biden needs to do, frankly, if he sends the $2,000 checks out, Bob, he needs to sign them with his name.
Well, there's a precedent for that, isn't there now?
I'm absolutely serious. I think that we need to connect what government does for people when they save their lives, when they bring in the infrastructure, when they save their check. People need to understand. Remember the guy who said he hates government, but don't put your fingers on my social security
Right.
check, on my
Right.
Medicare? I mean, people don't even know what government is. Well, you know what? It's time for us to own it, and when we deliver it, let them know we did.
And by the way, Mike's heard me say this before, maybe you have too, Arnie. I bring a lot of this back to that Republican Saint Ronald Reagan, who in his
Oh,
first
dear
inaugural
God,
address
it started
famously
with
said,
him.
government is not the solution to our problems, government is the problem, as he was about to take control of the United States federal government. This is some of those seeds he planted have come home to roost in a very virulent form in this mob boss that's now our about to depart president.
This is the Republican dystopian world. This is what you get when you have Republicans. Let's think back. Jimmy Carter left huge surpluses. And then what do we get? War and recession. Okay? Obama has to come in and save the day. And then what do we get? This guy. Insurrection. Blood on their hands. You know, Benghazi in Washington.
So we have a call.
All right.
Hello, Jim, this is the Progress Report. We're glad you called in. Are you there?
Hey, how are you guys?
We're great,
Good
we're
evening.
great. Thank you.
Great conversation.
Thank you.
I'd like to bring it back to the state of New Hampshire for a minute.
That's a good idea. Let's get back to New Hampshire.
Who's been a big supporter of President Trump for the last 4 years, an enabler in many ways, and you know, he's going to try and cleanse himself of the stain of Trump in preparing to run for national office. So I'm wondering what your thoughts are about that, and I'll talk to you guys off the air. Good
Thank
night.
you, Jim, for calling. That's a really good
Great
point.
question.
We'll talk about it. Who wants to go first?
Well, I've been begging the media for the last 6 days to ask Chris Sununu about what happened on the 6th. Finally, I think the other day, maybe yesterday, he finally came out and said he was appalled and that it was a horrific event. And
Yeah.
he sounded almost a little Gene Shaheen-ish, you know, and you know. So, and I'm thinking, wait a minute. Do you know that on the night of January 6th, the Republican governor of Vermont said that the president should be removed? Do you know that the Republican governor of Massachusetts, within 48 hours of the 6th, basically said the same thing? You know, the Republican governor of Maryland, he didn't wait for someone in the media to ask him. They issued a statement. We
Yep.
know what Chris Sununu is trying to do. He's trying to be a Muslim. He's trying to have it both ways. He's trying to, like, somehow appease his Trump base that
Yep.
he delivered into the House and Senate. And yet now, all of a sudden, because he's looking at his political future and wants to do what? He wants to run for United States Senate. So now he has to mellow himself out so he'll be actually approachable or votable against Maggie Hassan. It ain't going to work. It isn't going to work.
Well, I certainly hope not. You know, Dan Feltus, who ran a valiant campaign but doomed against Chris Sununu this last year, he kept saying, we're quoting Chris Sununu for saying he was a Trump supporter through and through. He kept doing that and doing that and doing that. Didn't have much political impact on this election for a variety of reasons, I suspect. But, you know, it is time for Sununu, I think, to join these other Republican governors in New England who were
Yes.
not Trump supporters. And Larry Hogan down in Maryland is a really great example. One of the most damning things about this event last Wednesday, which I haven't seen enough about, the timeline that's out there. I was going to try and get it and put it up today, but I didn't quite get it done. You know, when you go through the timeline of when Trump said what and what was happening at the Capitol, and you go on and on and on, it's really damning. I mean, it's not till the thing is really going way over the top that Trump says anything critical, and then in that one he ends up says, we love you, you're very special to us, after he says, oh, please
Sounds
be
like
peaceful.
Aiden Comfort to me, Bob.
Yeah. I mean, and for the Republicans to say in defense of the impeachment, oh, well, he never told them to go burn down the Capitol or, use violence. Well, you don't need to do that. I mean,
These guys,
a mob boss never says, go kill that guy. They say, take care of him. It's all in the language you use.
Well, I think this is going to be a very challenging time for Chris Sununu. Plus, we have to worry about how the hell we're going to get the vaccines out. I mean, right now, that is going to be one of the biggest challenges that we face. So can I make a recommendation? Did you hear Nikki Clark from the Capitol Center for the Arts? She was on TV the other night.
Yeah.
And she made a really good suggestion, and I want people in the state to hear it. I want Manchester, because you have the Palace Theater.
Yeah.
And what she said is that if you want to get an organized, an orderly way of getting as many people vaccinated as possible, why don't you use the theaters around the state?
Yeah.
We're in the business of organizing large events. We know how to get tickets out. We know how to get people in an orderly way. We could actually issue tickets. Come here at this location. We will get you in, get you vaccinated, and get you out. And they're empty. These theaters are empty. Why not use them?
Well, I think that's a great suggestion, and I had not heard that before, so I think that's very valuable. Thank you.
Well, and think about it. We have theaters in Portsmouth. We have theaters in Claremont. We have theaters in Lebanon, and they know what to do, and they know how to handle crowds do it in an orderly fashion. Let's be creative. Let's think out of the box. Let's use them. Can Chris Sununu do it? I don't know. We're dying like crazy, and I'm not sure we're getting the vaccines, especially into nursing homes, in a way that we need to do.
Yeah.
the infrastructure for the tickets is there too. You go online, you get a ticket, you go to the will call window and get your shot.
It's a brilliant
It's a great idea. I had not heard it, but I think it's a wonderful
It's a
suggestion.
brilliant idea. In fact, I talked about it nationally on my radio show today because I think every state could benefit from that because we already have this infrastructure in place. We've never thought about it this way, but we've never had a pandemic either, And here's a way for us to do it. But you know what the pandemic also proves, Bob? It proves that corporate America can't fix it. Only government can.
Yeah.
Right. I've said this before. I look at my son in London, and over there they're having this handled. They were the first people to get people vaccinated. Now they got this variant, which is very distressing. But they have a system called the National Health Service. National Health Service. And I've said this before, and I just want to repeat it. It doesn't matter whether it's the Conservative Party, the Tories, or Labor that's in control of the government. Nobody ever suggests they do away with the National Health Service because it's socialized medicine. Never happens. Never happens. Never happens in Canada, right up, where we have a border entry in this state. And yet here, what are we relying on? CVS and Walgreens. Jeez, come on.
And again, that's why I think we have to be creative. That's why it's going to be a real challenge to Sununu because he believes in the corporate response, but the corporate response is an absolute failure when you're dealing with this pandemic.
Yeah.
Also, he's got zero creativity. Of a guy who never had an original thought in his life.
Well, there you go. National Center for the Arts, Palace. I think we need to be creative and we need to be supportive. Whenever he does anything right, I will support him. Now the question is, what does right look like?
Yeah.
And you know what I'm going to suggest to Chris Sununu? That he should embrace what the Democrats tried to do. Remember when they were trying to create an independent commission to look at redistricting? If Sununu wants to get elected again, if he wants to make sure that they purge some of the crazies like the Trumpers, then they need to have an independent, creative commission to set out redistricting. The worst thing the Republican Party can do is to embrace partisan redistricting. It will destroy them forever.
And I'm sure you know, Arnie, that Olivia Zink, what's her group, is organizing a major effort in towns across the state for town warrant articles calling on each town to ask its state representatives to proceed with the redistricting, which will be happening this year in a transparent, nonpartisan way.
Absolutely.
I mean, it's not probably much of a response because the Republicans are going to control it, but it's a good step to remind them we want to see this. I think the worst Sununu veto of them all, even worse than my energy bills I cared so much about, was his vetoing of the Independent Redistricting Commission to redistrict without fear or favor or partisan advantage.
I wonder if he would rethink that. No, I'm dead serious. given the events of the last week of January 6th, given the fear of what we're now seeing with the Trumpists that control the Republican Party, the only way you're able to get a Republican Party that is a Republican Party you can trust, a Republican Party that will actually have to sort of speak to the middle, not to the extreme, is to make sure you have that independent redistricting. I think Olivia is absolutely right, and I bet you that you could actually have a conversation with Chris Sununu about the future of his party, and that's what saves his party.
Yeah. You know, what is the future of the Republican Party? There's a chance this may doom them. There really is. When I see these major Republican
They're all moving to Argentina.
donors, I mean, you know, other parties have disappeared, you know, the Whigs disappeared, you know, the Know-Nothings disappeared. There's been other parties that were prominent in our national life that have disappeared, and maybe this is the fate of the Republican Party at this point. But I think we need, if the Republicans can't fix their ship, we need a responsible opposition party. I don't think the Democrats should be in charge all the time of everything, and I think there needs to be a party to argue for fiscal discipline and, you know, maybe for...
Democrats do that. Democrats have as much fiscal discipline as Republicans.
Well,
It's
on the
just
record, they
priorities
certainly
are
do.
different.
They
It's
just
the
don't talk about it
priorities.
so much.
I'm not going to concede that field to Republicans.
Well,
Never.
how about advocacy for free trade? I mean, that was a Republican thing that's kind of gone by the boards with Trump and his tariffs and things. I mean, there's so many things that the Republican Party used to stand for that you and I wouldn't disagree with them on the policy, but we could understand it was an honorable position to take and worthy of being debated before we enacted legislation.
Well, I do not have a problem if obstacles to good policy, good democratic policy get removed. I got no problem with that.
Well, let me say something. There is going to be a debate, Bob, and it's going to be between the progressives and the moderates in the Democratic Party.
Yeah.
That's gonna be the new split.
Right, and that's where it's going to be, and that's going to be very, very interesting to see what happens here, because Joe Biden comes from the more conservative, more corporate part of the party, and yet when you begin to realize what the needs are and the yawning needs, remember where he even said he was considering making Bernie Sanders the head of labor. I mean, that is a recognition that we're going to have to do things differently, and I think he knows it.
Yeah.
So I think next year is going to be that conversation between the progressives and the rest of the Democratic Party to see who ultimately wins. But
Yeah.
the $15 minimum wage, when did that start? With Bernie Sanders. Whose mouth does it come out of now? Joe Biden.
Yeah.
Joe Biden. Remember.
Yeah.
It worked.
Liberals win.
It
History's
worked.
on the side of the liberals.
Well, I know you guys not may be as enthusiastic as I am, but so far I think Joe Biden as president-elect has done an absolutely excellent job. I think he said everything right, and I'm very, very pleased.
His climate team is unbelievable. His new head of the CIA is unbelievable. I mean, I'm just telling you, William Burns, I mean, think about this. So he's made some really remarkable choices. Plus, you know, he can do a lot by overturning the executive orders of Donald Trump, plus exercise a lot of executive orders himself. And
Yep.
now with Georgia, the world has changed.
Yep.
The world has changed, and we have such opportunity.
You know, one of the things I kind of lament that we have now that we didn't used to have, there used to be both major parties had their conservative and their liberal wings, or, you know, moderates, conservative, liberals. Both parties did. And, I think it goes back maybe more than anybody to Rush Limbaugh, who said all of the Democrats are socialists, they're all heinous, and insisted that the Republicans be all way to the right. No more is there, the tradition of, I don't know, we can think of people, Arthur Vanderbilt, others that,
Rhinos. You're talking about rhinos, Bob.
yeah, rhinos they're called now. They didn't used to be denounced as rhinos. They were Republicans with a responsible point of view that.
The Republican Party right now is not Lincoln's Republican Party. They are the fascist party of America. The Republican Party is doomed and should be.
Yeah, you may be right. And, this is going to be very tough for them in the future, and it should be. I mean, they've earned the fate that may befall them. And particularly when, as I said earlier on, when we see major corporations that have traditionally funded the Republican Party saying we're done with this. And I just saw that GoFundMe will not any longer, process, GoFundMe campaigns for candidates that are espousing the use of violence, or, sort of the same thing that Twitter said, which I thought was a very good statement when they said we're
I
going
wish we had time to talk about the no-fly list. I'd like to see these guys have to stay with their mothers.
Yeah.
not be able to fly.
I thought that was a good idea. That was Chuck Schumer that said that. I think that was a very excellent idea. Yeah, yeah. Yeah, we got to cut off their oxygen, and as Arnie said, if there's one thing that's oxygen to these people, it's money. That's why I'm really interested in seeing this withdrawal of financial support.
What really offends me is some of the big corporate donors have said they're not going to give to either party. And
Yeah,
I'm thinking, really? What did we do?
yeah,
No. I mean, this false equivalency.
Yeah, those are the whatabouters.
Donald
Yeah.
Trump causes an insurrection. Donald Trump lies. Donald Trump doesn't respond to the pandemic. Donald Trump does everything, and now their response is we're not giving to either side.
Yeah.
I'm
Yeah.
sorry. That is so outrageous. Once again, and the media does that too. These false equivalencies.
Oh,
You know,
yeah.
have to stop.
Well,
We
that's
have-
the Fox News specialty, these false equivalencies.
well, it's-
Interesting to listen to them, as I try and check in on what they're doing. And, they're not so much defending the claim that the election was stolen. They're not so much on that, actually. But what they are on is the media's got a double standard. They didn't cover the Black Lives protest moment as they should have, and they're giving too much to the Capitol riots.
This from the media that gave Donald Trump $2 billion of free media that
Yeah.
nobody got in order to win the 2016 election.
Yeah.
Excuse me, where's my barf bag?
Yeah,
I mean, if you want to know what brought Donald Trump, frankly, onto the national stage, let me introduce you to CNN, CBS, MSNBC. They all gave him things they had never given any other candidate. And it
well,
wasn't-
that's because that's what their viewers wanted.
No, it's well.
It
you
is
know
what their viewers wanted. When they stray from the Trump line, they hear it, especially on Fox with their opinionators, Sean Hannity, Laurie Graham, and Tucker Carlson.
No, stop
Well-
it. CNN wasn't Fox. CBS wasn't Fox. They did things for Donald Trump they had never done for any candidate before
Yep.
because it was all about money and ka-ching. Well, you know what? That money ended up destroying us and almost destroyed our democracy.
Yep. Well,
They're
guys,
just-
we've chewed up an hour in this scintillating discussion, and we got a couple of great calls. That was great. Good to see you both. Really glad you're back with us, both of you. And Mike and I will be back next week with another edition of the Prague Report. Mike will probably be on Skype again, and I'll probably be here. I'd like to be able to take the calls, and thank you to our callers. Everybody have a wonderful evening, and stay tuned. This country is going through a cataclysm right now. And we got to come out a better place on the other side. May it be so. Good night, folks. Thanks, Arnie. Thanks, Mike. Okay.